واسق حياتي قرآن.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, today we'll be learning 10 more lessons from Juz 3. Let's go to the first verse.
الله ولي الذين آمنوا يخرجهم من الظلمات إلى النور.
The first lesson we learned from Juz 3 is seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's guardianship. This is amongst those verses of Ayatul Kursi where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling that those who are the wali, those who are under the wilayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala take them from darkness towards the guidance. On the contrary, those who follow Taghut, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take them from light to the darkness. Now, light is referred as a guidance, and darkness is when a person goes astray. From this we understand that a mu'min is always under the wilayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We know that there are two types of wilayat, there are two types of guardianships, either the guardianship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or the guardianship of shaitan. Therefore, a mu'min always remains under the guidance and under the wilayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and does not go under the shaitan's wilayat.
يؤتي الحكمة من يشاء ومن يؤت الحكمة فقد أوتي خيرا كثيرا وما يذكر إلا أولو الألباب.
The second lesson we learn from this juz is the pursuit of wisdom. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this verse he says, He grants wisdom to whomever He wishes. And a person who is granted this wisdom, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will certainly give him an abundant good. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, Al-hikmatu dallatul mu'min, which means hikmah, the wisdom is the lost property of the believer. So now, wherever mu'min finds the hikmah and wisdom, he should strive and struggle to get that wisdom. The root of wisdom lies in the way of lives of 14 Ma'sumeen alayhim salam. Therefore, we need to follow them to full extent and learn the wisdom from Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam and from their seerah.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا أنفقوا من طيبات ما كسبتم ومما أخرجنا لكم من الأرض.
The third lesson we learn from this juz is spending in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of the qualities of a believer and a mu'min is that he spends in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He gives charity. Charity is not only financial, but it can also be by imparting knowledge and teaching knowledge and giving knowledge to the others. In one of the places in Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَنْفِقُوا مِمَّا رَزَقْنَاكُمْ, that give the charity مِمَّا رَزَقْنَاكُمْ, from what we have given you. So we know that whatever we have been bestowed and blessed with is given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So a mu'min should give in the way of Allah. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, the gist of the hadith is that it says that during the month of Ramadan, alms giving, the charity and the sadaqah, if a person gives, it is equal to freeing of a slave. So we understand that charity plays an important role in the life of a believer. And since we are in the month of Ramadan where there is a lot of thawab for charity, so a mu'min should try to give charity and spend in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وذروا ما بقي من الربا إن كنتم مؤمنين.
The fourth lesson we get from this juz is to abstain from usury, which is riba. A believer always protects himself in lending interest or receiving it. Imam Baqir alayhi salam says, أَخْبَثُ الْمَكَاسِبْ كَسْبُ الرِّبَا, which means the worst of earnings is the gain from usury, from riba, which is the interest. Now, we can check out the Islamic rulings of our own mujtahid regarding the interest, that is it allowed to gain the interest from bank, because it differs, like which bank is it? Is it a government bank or a private bank? So we can, inshallah, look into Tawduh al-Masail, or you can visit the website of your Mujtahid and check the Islamic rulings for that.
وإن كان ذو عسرة فنظرة إلى ميسرة وأن تصدقوا خير لكم إن كنتم تعلمون.
The fifth lesson we learn from this juz is giving time to the debtor to repay his debts. It has happened, or sometimes it would happen, that someone has taken a loan from us, but because he's poor, he cannot pay us back. According to the teachings of the Quran and Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, we learn that we should give time to the person for repaying the debts if the person is really poor. Now, it doesn't mean that a debtor shows laziness in paying if he has the strength to pay back. The verse is for those debtors who are unable to pay due to valid reasons.
قد كان لكم آية في فئتين التقتا فئة تقاتل في سبيل الله وأخرى كافرة يرونهم مثليهم رأي العين.
The sixth lesson we learn from this juz is trust on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help. During the Battle of Badr, we know that the believers were only 313 in numbers when compared to the 1,000 people on the opponent's side. The believers relied on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help after putting their full effort, and thereby won the war against their enemies. We know that the Muslims were 313 in number, whereas they had only 70 camels, 2 horses, 6 armors and 7 swords, but still they trusted and relied on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and won the battle of Badr.
قل اللهم مالك الملك تؤتي الملك من تشاء وتنزع الملك ممن تشاء وتعز من تشاء وتذل من تشاء بيدك الخير إنك على كل شيء قدير.
The seventh lesson we learn from this juz is that leading a respectful life by being a servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A believer knows that only Allah can give us the real respect. A believer does not humiliate himself by asking others for help instead of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are some respectful people like the ulama, urafa, like Ayatollah Bahjat, who were given honor and respect by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
قل إن كنتم تحبون الله فاتبعوني يحببكم الله ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم والله غفور رحيم.
The eighth lesson we learn from this juz is show of love in one's actions. A believer should, when he says that he loves Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the 14 ma'asumin alayhimus salam, he should show that love by acting on the commands what Allah and the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam had asked us. This verse was revealed when people came to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa wasallam and they said that they love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so much, but their actions proved otherwise and proved the opposite of what they were saying. So is it possible that when we say that we love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the 14 ma'asumin, but we don't listen to them? No. A believer and a mu'min listens to what Allah had commanded us and tries to become a better Muslim.
قل يا أهل الكتاب تعالوا إلى كلمة سواء بيننا وبينكم ألا نعبد إلا الله ولا نشرك به شيئا.
The ninth lesson we learn from this juz is the message of unity between different faiths based on commonalities. Now, a believer always likes to lead a life based on love and unity between different religious groups. This verse, this ayah tells all religious groups to come under the banner of Tawheed. But it never means that we leave our religion and take others' religion and act upon their commands. No, we don't have to leave Islam. Islam is a beautiful religion, but just based on the commonalities, one can stay under the umbrella and under the banner of Tawheed.
ومن يبتغ غير الإسلام دينا فلن يقبل منه وهو في الآخرة من الخاسرين.
The last and the 10th message we learn from this juz is respecting all the prophets and focusing on Islam. The mu'min respects all the prophets such as Prophet Musa, Prophet Isa, Prophet Ibrahim and all other prophets. But at the same time, we know that the complete religion is only Islam. If there were other prophets at this time or after Prophet Muhammad, they would have definitely and certainly believed in Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Therefore, we should be thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He has created us as a Muslim. So we should be thankful and try to become a better mu'min. These were the 10 lessons. Inshallah, we'll come again with the 10 lessons from the next juz. Till then, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
رحمن يا رحمن ساعدني يا رحمن اشرح صدري